This is The Extra Point, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast, sponsored by your Phoenix Suns.
Well, it has been an eventful week down in the old Pueblo. One football coach leaves, another comes back to town. And how do the Wildcats feel about it? How are they feeling out in Wildcat country? Let's talk to a man who knows. He's a season ticket holder. He's a podcaster for Wildcat country. The one, the only, good friend of the show, Eric Cohen, zooms back in to discuss. And Eric, how would you sum up your range of emotions the last 3 days?
Yeah, Mark, it has not. First of all, glad to be here. Secondly, it has not been fun since Sunday, or actually Saturday. I mean, the rumors about Jedd Fisch got really serious then, and I honestly didn't believe him. I thought Jedd is he's not going anywhere. He's happy in Tucson. He's got another year, then maybe he takes the Florida job or leaves for the NFL. I thought there was no chance he would go to Washington. Well, guess what? I was wrong. Once Lance Leipold turned down the job, the Kansas coach, started to get worried, and I was texting friends like, uh-oh, this isn't going to go well. The thing about Jedd leaving, first of all, thanks to Jedd, I'm one of the probably rare Arizona fans who appreciates what Jedd actually did for the program. He did great stuff. I mean, he came from year one, losing to NAU 21-19, and arguably one of the worst games I've ever been to in person. And then he takes his team to 10-3, wins his final 7 games at the end of 2023, and is a hero in Tucson. And then he bails. And I don't blame him for taking the money. You can't argue with that. It's how much he's trying to pillage the roster. That's just the problem with college football in general. So I don't mind that Jedd left for more money, and that's a significant amount of money that he left for, almost $8 million a year at Washington. But to pillage the roster, as has been rumored, that's not good.
So will he end up pillaging the roster based on today's news?
All right, so that's a good question. I've talked to a couple people. I think the current thinking is that Brent Brennan will be able to keep a good chunk of the roster. There will be some that want to leave to go other places and some that want to leave to go play for Jedd Fisch in Seattle. But I have a good feeling that the majority of Arizona's roster, as what I understand now, should be back. Now, I don't know anything. I don't have any inside tips here. But, for example, Braden Dorman, who is the third-string quarterback, so it was Noah Fafita, Jaden DeLora, Braden Dorman at the end of the season. He was slated to be the backup this upcoming year. He left, put himself in the transfer portal the other day, and just decided a little bit earlier today to come back. So that's a good sign. He said, I'm all in on Coach Brennan on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. That's a good sign as far as what other players are thinking.
All right, so the big question is the quarterback, of course, Fafita. How do you feel about your chances of him lining up under center opening day in the Big 12 for the Arizona Wildcats?
Boy, I like to make predictions. I mean, you and I go back a long ways. I like to make predictions, right? If
Yes.
I were to say it, 60% chance Noah Fafita starts game 1 for Arizona in the fall. And I think he and Tedero McMillan are a package deal. High school teammates, went to Arizona together. I think they're a package deal. I believe that there's more likely than not that they'll be there. Now, if this is wrong in the next 2 weeks, I've had no inside info. I'm just thinking that based on reading the tea leaves, those guys, are loyal. And I think that if they stay, a good majority of the team will stay with them.
If they stay, are the Arizona Wildcats a favorite to win the Big 12 next year?
Listen, even before that, I'm not sure that they were a favorite. I mean, Cam Rising's coming back for Utah. That's going to be tough. Kansas State, they're a pretty darn good team. They kept their coach, Chris Kleiman. They're coming back. They have a quarterback. I think Avery Johnson is his name. He's a dynamic one. So that's someone to keep an eye on. Kansas, Jalen Daniels coming back at quarterback. Lance Leipold, very good coach. They're going to be up there. Oklahoma State, Alan Bowman, quarterback, getting his 7th year of eligibility, which is wild. Don't even get me started on that. But they're up there, and I think Arizona's a top 5 team on paper. Now, with Fafita and McMillan, if they leave, all bets are off. With that said, I would still be surprised after all this shakes down if Arizona was not ranked ahead of ASU in the preseason polls.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's certainly, but I feel like we have no idea what the roster is going to look like either. So it could totally change. I mean, at this point, Ohio State's going to be playing the Dallas Cowboys in Saudi Arabia soon. That's what I keep saying. As far as the Brennan era, what did you make of the introductory news conference and the video that was tweeted out of him in the stands? It looked like as a student and a chance to come back to Tucson.
Yeah, he just seems like a really, really likable guy. I think that's what it comes down to. And, I had a chance to sit down, my co-host of Wildcat Country and I, Shane Dale and I had a chance to sit down with his brother, Brad Brennan, who was a receiver at Arizona and was in, the kind of the videos with Brent. I mean, they're very close. We had a chance to be able to talk to him a little bit earlier today. He's optimistic, obviously, about Brent's tenure at Arizona. But I think as far as he just said, what you see is what you get. And that's what Brad told us. I mean, he's a direct guy. He's someone that seems like he connects well with not only his players, but former players, the community, the media, etc. Just a likable guy. And Jedd Fisch was too. But I think Brent Brennan, to me, seems authentic. Jedd Fisch, as much as I always liked Jedd was always looking for another step up. If you look at Jedd's career trajectory, 2 years here, 3 years here, 1 year here, that's what it is. Brent Brennan, I feel like this is close to a destination job for him. He talked about Dick Tomey a lot in his introductory press conference. It's kind of his coaching idol. To be able to be right there with Dick Tomey in Arizona football lore, I think would mean a lot for Brent Brennan. His wife is an Arizona alum. I think that helps too. I think the fact that you see somebody who, and let's be honest, the money that he's getting is not necessarily on par with what Jedd Fisch was scheduled to get in his race from Arizona. In fact, it's not even close. It's a couple $1 million less. So Brent Brennan, you can tell this job means a lot to him, moving up from San Jose State. I really think he is going to be at Arizona for a while. I think he's a genuine guy, and I think he's going to be a pretty darn good football coach.
And as far as the administration down there, specifically, Dr. Robbins, I mean, he's under fire right now. There has to be with the, budget shortfall and trying to, justify paying for sports when there's going to be a huge bill, it looks like, here for sports. How would you grade how quickly he in the athletic department acted here to get a new football coach?
I got to give Dave Hickey, the athletic director, an A for here. But I'll tell you this. Brent Brennan was the guy that I wanted Arizona to hire in 2020. After they lost 70-7 to ASU, and I should never say those words, but, we're being transparent. They got blown out. And Kevin Sumlin basically had his issues, exited the program. That was great when that happened. And we were really, Shane and I in Wildcat Country were really pushing for Brent Brennan. We thought, hey, he's done a great job at San Jose State. And then they hired Jedd Fisch, and we were like, who is this guy? So I think now that Brent is getting a chance, I think this was Dave's guy originally, and I think Dave really got a chance to cement this hire, and I'm glad they turned on it quickly. I think waiting would have been a disaster. And I also think, the players had said they wanted Johnny Nansen, who, by the way, had left the University of Texas, or left the University of Arizona to go to your alma mater, the University of Texas, the other week to be the co-defensive coordinator, which is, good for you guys. Johnny Nansen did a great job last year and really turned this around. He was on the hot seat after his first year, but really made inroads, good recruiter, and apparently a good coach, did a good job with that team. So the players wanted Nansen. And I'm never a guy that is in favor of giving the players what they want, because as far as a coach, because that really doesn't work out generally that well. Brent Brennan was the safer hire. It was the smart hire. And I'm glad Dave Hickey made that move, and Dr. Robbins. So I'm giving them an A for this hire.
Any chance that Nansen makes his way back to Tucson from Austin when all is said and done here?
There have been rumors that he was offered the defensive coordinator job. I'm not sure that I buy it. So Dwayne Aquina is a guy that used to be used to be a Texas defensive coordinator. He was over at Stanford, came back to Arizona. He was the Desert Swarm defensive coordinator in the 90s. And he came back to Arizona last year and worked with Johnny Nansen, and they did a great job on defense. Obviously, Arizona improved greatly from 2022 to 2023. And he had also taken a job at Texas. Now, the rumor is that he is coming back He's obviously Brennan has worked with Akina before. Akina's family likes it in Tucson. He was going to retire there, as I understand. So I think the rumor is that Akina will be back. I would be shocked Johnny Nansen comes back if there's anything to those rumors about him being offered a big pay raise to come back. I don't see it.
So many ties between Texas and Tucson. You know, that what we talked about with the defense. You and me playing on the same softball team. It is pretty incredible here. As far as just the mood right now in Tucson, does this feel like a win?
I think so. That's a good question. I think for a while, you know, people were like, what, you know, everybody felt burned by Jedd Fisch. You know, they have pictures of him in a urinal at Gentle Ben's, which is, you know, one of the main bars on University. I think we're getting a little out of control here. Be grateful that Jedd Fisch gave Arizona a football team, probably the second or third best football team in the history of the program. You know, there's obviously the 98 team, which finished number 4 in the country. I think 1994 finished like number 7 or something like that. And then this team number 11. So we should be grateful for what Jedd did. And he was able to do it fairly quickly in only 3 seasons. I think people feel burned, but I think now they see a guy in Brent Brennan who's authentic, who wants to be here, most importantly. And I think if he can keep Fafita and McMillan and therefore a good chunk of the team, I think all of Tucson will be on board.
And you know what I'm wondering about, though, if he doesn't? You know, Brennan was just introduced with Chubba Purdy, Brock Purdy's brother there at San Jose State. I don't know if he's signed, but could you see a Purdy playing quarterback for your Wildcats to open the Big 12?
You know, I saw enough of Chubba Purdy at Nebraska. I was like, you know, I don't know. Listen, I wish him well at San Jose State. I would be surprised. I think if Noah leaves, Jaden Delores already committed to Texas State. I don't think he's coming back. I think probably Braden Dorman has a pretty good shot. They brought in a recruit locally, Damond Williams, who was a 4-star quarterback.
Yes, I think he's the best high school football player. Him and Navi Bruzan, but I would say Williams is the best I've seen here in the last 5 years.
Now that says something. Unfortunately, I don't think he'll ever see the field at Arizona. I think Jedd Fisch is going to put the full court press on him, and I would actually personally be surprised if he wasn't playing at Washington next year.
I mean, that shouldn't be allowed, right? I mean, but I guess there's no governing body. The NCAA is like, we'll schedule the games. There's nobody to enforce it. You're going to need federal legislation. And Congress is like, we're dealing with bigger issues here. So is there any enforcement agency? Will there be any rules here in the near future? Or are we just in the Wild West for the next for the time being here in college sports?
I think it's a mess. I mean, hey, listen, it's benefited Texas. You just got two big receivers in Silas Bolden from Oregon State and Isaiah Bond from Alabama. Hey, you guys got to love the transfer portal. You guys are loaded. As far as the schools like Arizona, it doesn't really benefit. I mean, it benefits maybe like 12 to 15 schools. Outside of that, it's the wild, wild west. I think eventually you're going to see football, the 3 or 4 biggest conferences break away from the NCAA and kind of do their own thing. I think you have to. I think NIL is a joke. I think that's messed up. I think the transfer portal is 100% broken. You should not be allowing kids to transfer over and over and over. Listen, it's one thing when a coach leaves, I get it. But at what point do we start thinking about, I'm playing for my university? You know, that's what I'm focused on. Play for the logo on the front of your jersey and on your helmet, not just a coach. I think these kids are too worried about money, and I think they're too worried about exposure. Play for the university, do the best you can. If you make some money, great, but focus on the pros. I don't know. Maybe I'm out of touch. Maybe I sound like somebody that went to school 20-some years ago, because that's true. I don't like it, and I think it's hurting college football specifically.
No, and I think about some of the stars of yesteryear, and I think about what if they had transferred and what that looks like and how will people be remembered, and specifically ETN going from Florida to Georgia. That doesn't seem right, and it makes me not want to watch, and I think there's going to be a lack of interest or some lost interest in college sports. Maybe not at the Ohio State, Bama, Texas level, Georgia level, but just overall, it just seems gross. But we appreciate everything you say. And there's so much to talk about. The last thing I want to ask about here is college basketball, because the Wildcats they can't really stand prosperity right now. How do you like their chances of playing in the Final Four this year here in the Valley of the Sun?
You know, I was looking to get my tickets earlier in the year, so maybe I was my Final Four tickets. Maybe I was the jinx. I still think this team is loaded. They lead the nation in scoring, averaging almost 92 points a game. You know, they play the Southern California schools who are down this year. USC is not very good. Play them tonight. UCLA on Saturday. They're having a down year as well. Listen, I think this is still a Final Four caliber team, but when they get on the road, they're just not doing what they need to do. Kylan Boswell, 25 minutes. I mean, this guy was a revelation as a 17-year-old last year in a backup role behind Kirk Kriisa. He's the starting point guard, and he started out this year great. Last game against Washington State, 25 minutes, 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists. That is inexcusable to be invisible for 25 minutes. Now, I think he bounces back. I think Arizona has a good weekend of basketball. I think they're up there in the Pac-12 regular season standings. I mean, they're behind ASU by a game, 2 games back of Oregon. I think they finish up there, could see them winning the Pac-12 tournament. What I see here, though, that's different is this team has battle-tested veterans. They have guys that aren't necessarily afraid. Caleb Love, for example, was in the national championship game a couple years ago for North Carolina. Keyshawn Johnson was in the national championship game last year at San Diego State. These guys are not afraid. Azuolas Tubelis, Kirk Kriisa, you can make an argument last year when they got down to Princeton in the final minutes, those guys kind of tightened up. I don't think you'll see that from Love and Johnson, among others. But can this team win consistently on the road? We thought they could earlier in the year with that win at Duke. Been a little rough. These next few weeks are crucial. Now, remember this, my last thing. UConn last year, I think, lost 6 of 8 in January. And look what happened to them. They won the national championship. I want to see Arizona get past this, play very solidly in February and going into March on a high note. And then I'll feel a lot better about their Final Four chances.
All right, where can we hear you and another friend of the show, Shane Dale, on Wildcat Country? What's your next episode set to drop here?
We're gonna drop an episode tonight. Later after the Arizona USC game, we are going to talk to Brad Brennan, who is Brent's brother and former Arizona receiver. He will join us, and we'll just give some quick thoughts on the Brent Brennan hire. So check that out. You can find that on all major podcast platforms. You can find it at Cat Country AZ on X, or you can go to YouTube and search Wildcat Country.
Are you pitching in softball this week, or have you retired?
You know, I retired like 3 years ago. The fond memories that I had being your teammate and watching you be a clutch playoff performer. Not many people who listen to this podcast know how clutch you were hitting a home run. You were not a dynamic home run hitter, but you did hit one out in the playoffs, and I will never forget that sweet left-handed swing going out behind the right field fence that night.
Yeah, I tripped around first. I was so surprised it went out of the ballpark. But thank you for letting the audience know that. It's one of my crowning sports achievements. So, Eric, always great to talk to you, and we got to get you here in studio at some point. Chop it up.
Would be great. Thanks for the opportunity, Mark.
The Extra Point Podcast is a production of 3TV, CBS5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.